Welcome to the Production Talk podcast with me, Yarn of mixartist.com.au. In this podcast series, we celebrate the modern way of producing music. We want to talk about all things related to songwriting, recording at home, and music production. So if you produce your music at home, this is the place to be. Please subscribe and recommend this podcast to all your friends. This is the Production Talk podcast, episode 31. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me again for another episode of the Production Talk podcast. Before we begin this episode, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land that the following conversation was recorded on, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Today, I'm super excited to announce this interview with Jessica Chambray. Jessica Chambray is a business coach and podcast host of the Abundance Hub podcast. She's also a specialist in mindset, and I've been very fascinating with this entire world because I know that we put a lot of effort into building our creative craft. At the same time, we need to know a certain degree of business skills to make a return from all our creative skills. And when it comes to the business side of it, I definitely consider myself a student on a learning curve with plenty left to discover. So when I discovered Jessica's Abundance Hub podcast, I was super excited and learned so much from it. And I was fascinated of her understanding of the human mind and how the mindset and the mental approach can help people succeed in their business, or if something is misaligned, can also stand in the way of succeeding. So I'm very fascinated about the interaction between creativity, business, and how this interacts with our state of mind. And I hope to speak to Jessica today to shine some light on this, and I really hope that you get heaps of valuable information out of it. But just to manage expectations right at the beginning, by no means will this be a conclusive episode that answers all your questions for good. Instead, take this episode as a first little spark that would hopefully ignite your curiosity to learn more about yourself, to consider approaching things differently if things don't currently work, and search for a method to find the solution within yourself. Okay, good. Enough of this. Let's get straight to the good stuff. Here is my interview with Jessica Chambray. Jessica, thank you so much for making the time. I know that your time is very valuable and it's very rare to get time with you. So I'm very grateful that you made time for me today. Welcome and good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's
great to have you. Say, you're a specialist for business and mindset. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. A little bit of, I suppose, backstory, if you don't mind me sharing.
Please.
I started off my coaching journey really focused on being a mindset coach, and I used to talk a lot about healing trauma and doing all of those things. But what I have helped a lot of people in that arena. But what I also came to realize in the last 2 or 3 years was that the reason a lot of people's businesses fail is because of the mindset or the lack of ability to push through those limiting beliefs or those traumatic events. And so now, and I think people, it sounds a bit funny, but I think people actually like the idea of hiring a business coach more than they do a trauma coach or a mindset coach. So yeah, I'm very passionate about helping people with business from a strategic point of view, but also from a point of view of let's really get to the bottom of what's happening for you, so that then you can open up the chain of abundance for for what you want to create.
So your podcast is the Abundance Hub podcast, and I find it very, very inspiring. So I've taken a lot of valuable information from it for my own business. You know, I run a small business. I'm still starting up, but I've taken a lot of good things from you, and I would like to open this a bit up and talk about the musical community. So we live at a time where, about 60,000 songs are released every day on Spotify and are literally up for sale from Spotify for a fraction of a cent. And musicians live at a time where there's fierce competition. There's just an overwhelming number of competitors in the market and very low income. And that's at a time when COVID hit us. So how can a musician these days not be negative? I guess that's my question. We have so much it feels like the world is rigged up against musicians. Or am I already looking at it from a wrong mindset point of view? What is your take on that?
That's such an interesting, I must give everyone context. I'm in no way aligned with the music industry. So obviously it's always interesting. I'm not an expert in that, but I can definitely understand from a perspective of COVID and then obviously live gigs shutting down as well and festivals. There's been a lot of hard hit on that whole industry. Would you relate music, like being an artist, and creating music as a similar thing to being an artist, like a painter, or like do you see it as a not as a blanket, but as a whole, any artist can be a struggling one?
Well, yes, I think what I want to talk about would probably apply to artists all over the world. No? As I believe artists, we all struggle with these two worlds: the creative world, where there's very little structure, where there's just sometimes just paint flying in all directions and it's messy. But then there's also business. And business needs to be structured. There needs to be books kept. And, there's two different mindsets already that we creatives need to navigate between.
Yeah.
And, I've observed that a lot of my friends are struggling these days due to, I guess, external circumstances. And I also see some people succeed. So I was wondering, could that be a mindset thing? Could it be the mindset that makes some creatives succeed in times of challenge, and others, might be stuck in their own little corner and can't find a way out of it? What is your take on that?
Yeah. Something that springs to mind, which I'm very passionate about, and I loved it when you talked about, that creative side, and then obviously that structural side of business. I relate that a lot to the feminine masculine balance. So, typically you would kind of be more inclined to say that the masculine side, because every human has a level of both feminine and masculine within them. And I teach a lot of this when I'm talking around business strategy and structure and how to do that. And I would kind of see, so when I'm talking about masculine, you would think about words like discipline, you would think about words like decisiveness, structure, those types of words.
Yes.
And when you're talking about feminine, you would talk about words like flow and surrender and freedom and all of those things, which I think is a space that artists would tend to go into when they're in creation mode.
Yes.
Is that like, flow state? Is that not wanting to be confined by, we've only got 1 hour to record a song, or because we may need 3, or the words come to us in the middle of the night or whenever they are meant to. So in business, I definitely think there's a good amount of strategy that you can adopt when it comes to how often you need to be in each side or in each state.
Okay.
Which for me works really well. So, and obviously I'm not sure whether you have more male listeners or female, but I think it does almost relate across the board. What would you say in terms of that?
Yes. I have no statistics, but I would assume it's about parity. I'd hope to have about parity.
Okay. Yeah.
I definitely don't want this podcast to be male or female based at all. I want to be inclusive for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just give you a little bit of context in terms of what I believe the balance is in terms of masculine and feminine energy. I believe that it's about 60-40. So if you're a male, you're 60% masculine and 40% feminine, and vice versa. If you're a female, 60% feminine, 40% masculine. But what a lot of us have trouble with is being hyper aware of when we need to tune into a certain part of us, right? And so females love being female, and males generally like being male. They like doing the men things. But then when it comes to bringing creativity into it, it's almost like this, I suppose what you would call like this limitless and boundless thing, where when you're an artist, it's so easy for time to just disappear, and it's so easy to have to be in that trust process and give it all you've got.
Yes.
And then what I would be assuming happens a lot is there is no structure put into place because we're too busy trying to create and not actually figure out the structure behind the business and be really resourceful and clever with strategy behind it. Are you kind of following that in terms of where people might be able to benefit?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I think just the awareness by itself can be really helpful.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has got different way to manage that. And for myself, for example, I've found that the mornings are my creative time. Once the kids are out of the house and the dust settles, that's when I open up mixes, and that's when I, get into that, what you mentioned as flow state. And, I do all of those things, and it lasts a couple of hours. And then I need a lunch break. And when I come back, it's often, it's a different energy for me. And that's the time when I answer emails or do bookkeeping. And I guess everybody is different. I know that a lot of my friends are night owls. They are creative in the middle of the night, and that's fine. But so you're suggesting to sort of structure a day so that you get a bit of both,
Yeah. Well, it's a good place to start. And I suppose,
yes.
And then when it comes to the mindset, I think when starting any business, we have to be really realistic around what our end point is and what our goals are.
Yes.
And I often say to my clients, start where you want to end.
That's fascinating.
So what a lot of people will do, and I'm guilty of it, so I'll have to give you all the disclaimer. I've been in business for 20 years and I've failed many times. I've run businesses where we've had commercial leases and our income wasn't flowing and we hadn't been able to pay the bills properly, and we would not treat the clients as well as we possibly could because of lack of systems. And so it hasn't been something that I've just read out of a textbook and gone, oh, that sounds like a good quote. It's actually been through a lot of experience and a lot of failure that I can give you that advice.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is, number one, having a vision that's long-term is really important.
Yes.
Understanding what your goal is. And this is something that not only relates to business, but it relates to everything in life. So I would always say to somebody, if they were about to have a conversation with someone or if they're about to make a decision, what's the outcome? Where do you want to end? It's a great quality question, right? Like, what's the outcome of today? What's the outcome of this podcast? What's the outcome of your business ownership? And so if you're first able to be very clear on the end goal, then you will understand the kind of work involved. So when I started my coaching business, it was very easy for me to just take clients on board and send them no contracts and just give them an invoice and then just tell them the Zoom code and then just hope they remembered it. Whereas I didn't allow for my growth in business. And so then when my business grew rapidly, I realized that there were so many systems that I hadn't bothered implementing. And so I didn't start with the end goal in mind.
I see. That's like growing pains in a business sense.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So for example,
I can relate to that.
It's my third year as a full-time coach, right? And I feel like I've been doing it a lifetime, but there were times when I'd gotten so overwhelmed because I had so many clients and I didn't have a system that just automatically put those those appointments into my calendar, or automatically sent that person a reminder, or I didn't have a day when I paid bills. So every 5 minutes I'd be like, oh, which bill needs paying? Or like becoming extremely scattered and not getting anywhere fast because I didn't have this end goal.
I see.
So then I really sat down and I thought about what my end goal was. And so that can be a few things. It can be a financial end goal, a lifestyle end goal, or a work-life balance end goal. And then as humans, we have human needs. So, some people work because, and if anybody wants to look that up, there's a really easy test that you can do through Tony Robbins, who's a motivational speaker, a 6 human needs test. But we all also work from our basic human need. Now, my number one human need is contribution, which is why I love doing what I do. Like I'm driven by helping people. It's physically a part of my being. Whereas somebody else's human need could be connection. So if you take connection away from that person, let's put an example. You're an artist and you love getting in the studio and you love hanging out with other musicians and going to festivals, and all that's taken away, you're left with no connection.
That's true. I believe that describes what musicians are experiencing at the moment, or have been experiencing for a year and a half now. Yeah, spot on.
Same with significance. Like if you're a significance-driven person, and none of these are negative either. So some people would see the word significance and think it's negative, but
can you explain what you mean by significance?
So I'll give you an example. So my ex-husband was a award-winning photographer, and he's an amazing photographer, but he was driven by winning the awards because he loved being made significant. He loved being told he was great.
Yes.
He loved having the titles, which actually was positive for him because it drove him to try harder and to create better imagery as a result. Whereas I couldn't care less that my podcast hit number 11 in Australia a couple of years ago, and it felt nice, but I was kind of like, who cares? Like it would be like hitting the number 1 in the charts, or being an artist in the Triple J's Hottest 100. Like someone would be like, fuck yeah, that was the best thing ever. And someone else would not care.
Yes.
They would be like, oh, okay, so now that I've got more fame, I'm earning more money, I can give more to charity.
Yes, I can really relate to that. From a musician's perspective, some are obsessed by the idea of being a number 1 hit artist or playing the big stages or world tour, and others are just very happy to play the local pub every couple of weeks. And there's a place for everything. There's no wrong or right. And it really depends on what one's desire is, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah. And so understanding yourself, and then also understanding that or having a basic idea of the end goal is super important when you're starting a business, because then you understand the work that's required. So
that makes so much sense.
Yeah. So that if you let that land, it really does. Like it's a really good question. What my work involves is just the curiosity of humans, understanding ourselves better. Why do I do that way? Why don't I do that this way? What's going on for me there?
Yes.
Like I would just put down work at any moment if someone invites me for a glass of wine, because I am also very connection driven. So contribution and then connection is very important to me. So for example, when I crafted my business, I knew that I was going to need to be able to connect and help people. And I knew that there was a certain amount of money I wanted to earn. And then I also thought about, and that also pertains to our responsibilities in life,
Yes.
And so it's really worthwhile thinking about it all. And then what you're able to do from that place is reverse engineer and be realistic with what you might need to do in order to heighten the odds of you achieving what you want to achieve.
I see, yes. It all connects, yes.
Yeah.
Perfect, okay.
So just to put that in context, which might be helpful, And I used to also work in a network marketing business, and I used to coach a lot around that because people would go, oh, I want to earn this much per month, and back in those days, this was about 5 or 6 years ago, but it was very much like if you could earn 20,000 a month, you'd be a success, and that all sounded amazing, right? But when you sat with someone and reverse engineered the work, so I was very successful in that business, and I did get to a point where I was earning great money. I was doing like 60 to 100 reach outs a day. I didn't stop. I was fiercely dedicated to doing all the shit no one else wanted to do, right?
I see,
and I
yes.
was like, there is no way I'm not making this work. Because I also got told by somebody I probably wouldn't make it work. And I was like, you tell me that, I'm going to make it work. So.
Oh, okay. So in some ways that person did you a favor.
Yes, they did. Absolutely.
Igniting a certain spark in you. That's fantastic. Okay. Yeah, I love that. I can see myself in a lot of things that you've explained. And in some ways, I wish I had this talk with you 10 years ago. That would have saved me so much time and learned so many things in life the hard way. Yeah, but that's so true. Is it okay if I change the subject a little bit?
Yeah.
So your podcast is The Abundance Hub. The abundance mindset is something that fascinates me, and I consider myself a student of that, probably at the beginning of the learning curve still, but I'm fascinated by that. Is it fair to say that the opposite of that would be a victim mentality?
Pretty much, yeah, hit the nail on the head. Yes.
Can you expand on this a little bit? Let's maybe start with the negative first, if you don't mind. Victim mentality, what is that? What's going on in somebody's mind, and what does it do? What limits does it set around a person?
Yeah. This is it's perfect timing for this because I just recorded a podcast which goes for about an hour, almost on this complete subject. So my mind is very fresh around it.
Excellent. Look, I want the link, and we're going to put that in the show notes if that's
amazing.
Okay with you.
Yes, amazing.
Please tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, there's a really good one that that people could actually listen to that's available now, which is the 7 levels of consciousness, which I talk about on a previous podcast. But this one that I just recorded and what I'll talk to you guys about today is the map of consciousness. And this is a little bit woo-woo, but I'll give it to you. And I think any human should understand this, right? So, and I'll give you the short version. But basically, we talk about energetic frequency or vibrational frequency, and one of the lowest, so there's a scale, and it goes between 0 being the lowest frequency and 1,000 being the highest. 1,000 is classed as enlightenment, becoming a guru, never seeing the bad in anything, just being completely ineffable, just everything is what it is. You can picture an Indian guru, enlightened. It is what it is.
Yes.
There's no need to fuss. There is nothing to worry about. And one of the lowest vibrational states is shame. And that relates very directly to being a victim. And so when people say victim mentality, a lot of people find that very jarring. They're like, I'm not a victim. But anytime you take anything and you don't take full personal responsibility for it, you're becoming a victim.
Okay.
Anything at all, right? And so there are a few different ways that people can play in that arena of that low-level vibration, but a lot of it, when people are in victim mentality, they will say things like, well, because of COVID, we can't make money, right? Or because all the venues are shut down, we've got nothing to do. I'm using your industry as some examples.
Please.
Or because I had a divorce and I'm a struggling single parent, it's too hard for me to run a business on my own, which could be something I could say. I don't though. I transfer that into a better state, a vibrational state, which would be a willingness and an acceptance of what we're experiencing. So when you're in victim, shame, blame, anger, fear, anxiety, all those words, which we can all deeply relate to at one point, we're playing at about 10 to 20% of our potential in life, which is, to me, scary.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah. So you picture yourself as an artist who's got this talent, and you're still, every day you're waking up and you're thinking, COVID mandates, rules, this, Spotify charging nothing for our music, etc. We're finding all the problems. We're not able to see past it. And then we want to go and create this piece of music, right?
Mm-hmm.
But where our energy is at like 10 to 20% of where it could be. And so whether you believe it or not, it's science and it's true. Where you create from is so important, right? So if you're sitting down in victim, anger, shame, fear, frustration mode, and you're creating art from that place or music from that place, I'm not saying it's a definite failure, but you can only imagine the difference of creating from a place of maybe not even abundance mentality, but even just an acceptance mentality.
I see.
Or a different energetic vibration.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And we only attract what we are and where we create from.
Oh, that's gold, what you just said. I figured out in my own life that what I experience is often an echo of myself.
Yes.
It's that if I am negative about something, other negative things seem to come as an echo effect, and they just simply show up on the doorstep, and I have no control over it. But it also works in the positive way. So once I get over myself and finally pick up the phone and reach out to a client, suddenly amazing things happen. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people struggle with that concept, because if they have things exterior, like we could use our current climate with, the mandates and COVID as a good example, it's very hard for people to come to that understanding, because they're like, well, no, what happened there? I had no control over that, right? So a lot of people struggle with the concept of
Yes.
What you think and how you be is what you create. But ultimately, it can be a very empowering concept, because if we are to fiercely work on our energy, our energetic number, our energetic frequency, and create more consciously from that place, how fun is it to be able to play with that idea and go, what if I created from the path of least resistance?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So just no attachment to the outcome, creating from a place of what's the word? No scarcity.
Yes.
No scarcity mentality, no victim mentality. And just having a completely different viewpoint will ultimately guarantee you more success than the opposite.
So we're just making our way slowly away from the victim mentality to the other end, which is the abundance mindset. Can you explain that in your words? What kind of a mindset is that? What's going on in somebody's mind who's got that?
Yeah. So we move through different there's different names for these different levels, and we move through these different frequencies. And when we get about halfway, which is around that 500 number, we've moved into past our BS and our problems and our victim mentality to a place of acceptance and courage. So that's where it first kind of starts, is that frequency of I'm accepting things the way they are, and I'm going to be courageous anyway, and I'm going to keep and become resourceful and start having optimism as a part of my life, and all those types of words. And then we start to move up into the higher states, which ultimately have no option but to attract abundance, which is love, joy, and peace. I mean, and if anyone is listening, literally just saying the words love, joy, and peace makes you feel so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you say the word blame, victim, trauma, it just feels heavy, right?
Okay, yes.
But saying like, I want to embody a state of love today. Being at peace is one level down from enlightenment. Joy is under that and love is under that. So what about if you learnt to love the challenge of Spotify being a thing?
Mm-hmm.
What if you found joy in the fact that instead of being in person for gigs, there was this crazy new pivot point or this new invention that you could make or this something else? Like, or what if you found peace in it and you were just able to create no matter what and just be at complete peace? From that place, it's actually impossible for the abundance not to show up. It's physical, universe, God, whatever you believe in, the higher source. And, you know, you would hear people say, the universe provides for me, and, you know, people like, oh, hippies and their thoughts on the world. But physically, when your brain waves and your neurology is working from that perspective, nothing goes wrong. And I've been at the bottom, you know. If anyone listens to my podcast, like a year and a half ago, I was left, you know, with my marriage breaking up. I had debt only, and I had no money in my account. Like I think I might have had $5,000 or something at one point, but I really didn't have a lot. And I had 2 children and rent to pay and all these things. So I can definitely, you know, I suppose just relate to those feelings of scarcity. But what I realized is that when I was creating from that place, it didn't work for me. Clients didn't come, opportunities didn't arise. And as soon as I gave way and was able to look at everything and say, I actually know I'm supported. Like I know that I'm supported by the universe, by God, by source, whatever you choose to believe in. And I know that when I'm in a full place of acceptance and love, I know that everything will come to me, which does sound a bit woo-woo, but it's,
okay.
I believe it's impossible for abundance not to come to humans that are operating from that place.
And it really sounds like a mindset that I really want to be in. You know, that sounds like a happy place to be. Is it true to say that, you know, when you're in this place, that the more you share, the more you get back?
Absolutely. Yes.
Look, so many things just start to connect in my mind right now. Just recently, I did an interview with a friend of mine, Jacob, who's a musician, and he basically decided that, you know, as COVID came, running a band was not the right thing, but he accepted that and didn't fight it. Instead, he started his own YouTube channel, and before he knew it, he had 6-figure clicks and is probably making some money. I'm not quite sure. I didn't ask the question. But that's an example where he just started to give away his music, and then suddenly something comes back, and he made a bit of a breakthrough there, I reckon. And he's probably just starting. Who knows where he ends up at? Would that be an example of somebody moving away from victim mentality and into the realm of abundance?
Absolutely. Yeah. And
it's
also a really
clear
good
to me now.
and a good example of resourcefulness as well, of acceptance, like, which is a high vibrational state, is being accepting of your circumstances rather than moving resentful, victim-y.
Yes.
So he accepted it, and then he became resourceful, and then he removed scarcity, created from enjoyment.
Yes.
From joy, right? High vibrational frequency, joy, just did what he loved anyway.
Yes.
Gave in, surrendered, which is a feminine thing. Surrender. It doesn't matter if I don't make money. I'm going to go get the job or do the other thing to pay the rent, and I'm just going to give back. And likely what he's already done will create something abundant for him.
I'm sure he's still young, and, you know, he's very talented, and he's probably going to blow up big time one day. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. That's fantastic. You just mentioned the word scarcity. So that's also some kind of a mindset. Like, I just wrote a new song, but I don't want to show that to anybody else because they might steal it.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean by scarcity?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
That's also a part of the victim mentality or the negative mindset that
it definitely can be. Yeah. When we think about scarcity, sometimes like people will create from, I suppose, another word like desperation.
Yeah.
Scarcity, desperation, a need. And what that does is it creates resistance. So there's not a flow with it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like when you talk about people not showing songs or things like that, again, energetically, that's coming from fear, anxiety, all those words, right? That we never want to create from. So, and that's probably like a big subject. But one thing that I've found, I mean, I'm in the coaching industry, and a lot of my friends are coaches, and we have been in that place where we would all kind of not talk to each other about our business. We'd all be like, oh, I'm not going to talk to each other about our things because they might do what we're doing. But that's not an abundance mindset either. That's that scarcity of there's not enough work out there. There's not enough clients out there. There's not enough humans to pay me for my thing. What if I act this way or I create that and it doesn't work? What's going to happen? So it's that fear, secretiveness, being unresourceful. But one of the best ways to move past that is, especially if we're using like an example of like sharing your stuff with other people, is to again go back to where we started, which is understanding yourself and being inquisitive with your behavior. Going, what is this about for me? Am I scared that someone might steal this idea? Or am I worried about judgment that they won't like my song? Or what is it? So it's about self-inquiry, because then what you can do is you can go into the next opportunity for communication and say, like, I'll give you an example. I said to one of my girlfriends who's also a coach, we both live on the Gold Coast, we're best friends, we're very similar. I said to her, sometimes I think, I don't want to tell anyone who I'm using as a mentor, because I don't want everyone using the same mentor, because then, like we all might be the same. Or I don't want to show you what I'm launching, because what if you think that's a good idea and you launch the same thing? Or, but what was more important was me expressing, and we both had some really honest conversations that filtered through, but I'll just share what I was expressing, which was, there's fear popping up for me here, right? And so when I was able to genuinely feel it and go, well, I'm actually just a bit scared that you might steal it, or you might copy it, or you might think it's shit, or then this whole channel of acceptance and love came in. And so that same process could be used with artists of saying, well, I can get very curious with my behavior, and then I can try and understand it, and then I can work from a place of, like, I'd love to show you this, but I really would really like to know that you're going to go easy on me, or I'm really looking for a critical eye on this, or I'm a bit wary that something in here is, I feel it's a really deeply my creation, and I really don't want someone, like anyone, to jump the bit and take this from me. But ultimately, again, we come back to abundance mindset, which is, there's no new idea, there's no new lyric, there's no new nothing. This planet's been around for too long.
It's all been there already, yes.
Nothing I can say isn't something I haven't experienced, heard, read. It's not me in creation, it's just my delivery of it. Yes.
Oh, that is so true. What you mentioned reminds me of some of the best concerts that I've been to. And it's not the concerts where people play the most complex scales or the technical elements of music that are in the back of my mind that leave a lasting impression. It's usually the concerts where the musicians just enjoyed themselves on stage more than any other band I've ever seen. This enjoyment is usually what jumps across and makes the audience jump, rather than playing, a certain chord better than somebody else's, or more chords in a song.
Yeah.
I guess that feeds into the abundance mindset as well, that, sharing a positive energy enjoyment, it's somewhat contagious, isn't it?
Yeah. And how do you want people to feel in your energy when you're singing or you're creating, Because ultimately that's what I believe the best songs are created from, is a feeling, right?
That is so true. That is so true. Yes. Look, this just went right down to the absolute core of my business. That's basically what I do when I mix. I just take random audio files, and make them so I feel something. And only when I'm super excited about it, then I pass it back to my clients, and only then. And I think that's what people hear. The excitement. And there's also, this saying that with your eyes closed, when you listen to a song, you can hear the player smile. You can hear a smile through the playing. And, I think that's the magic. That's the magic of creativity and music.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously that can't really come from a place where somebody is in a victim mentality or, scarcity mindset, worried about life and worried about sharing their music. It only can come from, the happy feeling of sharing it just with everybody. Wow. This is deep, Jessica. This is really deep. I have to almost apologize because, this podcast went into a direction that I didn't fully plan.
Oh, that's cool. I love that.
Didn't brief you on all of these things yet. But another subject that I would like to touch on, if that's okay with you, is finishing projects. And I guess that ties into what we spoke about already, that I've met so many people who work on their music for a year or 2 years or 3 years, and it almost seems to me like they're scared of finishing it up. What's going on in somebody's mind when people just can't finish a creative process?
Yeah.
Can you shine some light on that?
The first thing that comes to mind is what we're basically all struggling with a lot, which is fear of 3 things, which is fear of judgment, fear of failure,
yes,
or fear of success.
Oh, that's a good one. I think the first 2 I can relate to a lot, and I'm pretty sure that most musicians have a bit of that in themselves as well. How do you overcome those things?
How do you overcome that? The first thing is we have to learn how to not judge ourselves. So we have to step into that place of like fully feeling our wholeness and not judging our creative process.
Okay.
So for example, how did I get to a point where I'm happy to be on someone's podcast, not knowing what questions are being really are going to be asked, and just knowing that I've got value to add. Right? It's like a process of just breaking down that need for perfection, like breaking down the societal like ideology around what that even is. I use this with my female clients, like what makes someone attractive or pretty? Like nothing. Like I believe it's energy. But because somebody said, oh, well, if you're 10 kilos overweight, according to society, or if your music isn't on trend, or if your hair isn't this way, like we have all this built up conditioning that causes us to judge ourselves so much. And so number 1 is starting to just fall in love with your process and with who you are, and acceptance of yourself, and just getting back to that place, because I find that I was very judgmental of others, which was a clear indication of how much I judged myself. So again, mirrors.
Oh, that's gold.
That guy's music's shit. That guy, his voice is no good. I don't know how he ever made it.
Yeah.
Versus like, power to you, brother. Like, well done for making it. Like, so we do that. One thing that I do with my clients, and this comes to having money, not having money, having success, not having success, being in a relationship, not being in a relationship, is having an understanding of duality, which is, the high, the low, the up, the down. So everything in life has duality. So war and peace, up and down, hot and cold, love and hate are all examples, And so what most people do is they chase the high of success and they want to avoid the low of failure.
True.
So one of the easiest ways, it's not that easy, but one of the ways that I teach people to lose that feeling, and we do this with everything, right? We're always chasing pleasure. We're trying to get away from pain, is to understand that even at the top with the most success and all the money, you're still going to have the same number of problems. They're just going to be different problems. And even with nothing, you're still going to have the same amount of pleasure available to you and joy available.
Whoa. Okay.
And I got this really deep when I was in India because, people travel overseas and they say, oh, I could see this person living in poverty and it just made me feel so grateful for the running water I have. But what I did is I went to India looking for how these people had more than me because it was very obvious they had less. They didn't have my bag, my clothes, the money in my account, the ability to travel, the hotel rooms, etc. They were, living in slums and eating with their hands and barefoot and no drinking water and all these things, right? And some very extreme levels of poverty and some medium. But I went and seeked out the opportunity to see where they had more than me because I believe so deeply in duality. And what I realized is that the people that lived in these awful slums and they had, the babies and the young parents and the grandparents and the great-grandparents and the auntie and the sister, and they were farming carrots and that's all they did. And they never had days off and they never went anywhere. They didn't have phones. They didn't know what public transport looked like, etc. What they did have that I didn't have was like an abundance of time, an abundance of connection, an abundance of actual freedom, the ability to just be with the people they love consistently, and these things we often don't have. And so if you have a perception that when you get to a certain point, you'll be happy. Like I remember thinking, if I get $10,000 in my account, I'll be happy. And then I got that and I was like, I'm not that happy. Like what I was trying to attain was silly. And so what I lent into instead was, how do I cultivate happiness right now? Like, how do I understand that there is physically nothing that can bring me it? The success means nothing if you already feel successful.
I got it. Wow, this is gold. This is gold. I love what you just said.
So what if you were to just, and this is a practice I do when I feel scarce. I'm literally recording in my daughter's bedroom because its sound is good in here. But if I was just to stand and look at what I had, I would already feel abundant and successful. I've got a bed. I've got you stand in the shower and you let the water run over your back. And do you ever think, holy moly, that is clean drinking water available for free with a multitude of temperatures? No, we just stand in there and we wash ourselves. Whereas when you're in that mindset of like tuning into what you have or tuning into how successful you are. So I do this thing with my clients, obviously, where I say, brag about everything you've done well today. I made my bed. I brushed my teeth. I paid my bills on time. I watered my plants. I created art. I gave the person I love a kiss. I was nice to my kids. I'm already a success, right? So anything else is just a bonus now.
Okay.
Also, in the energetic frequency of already feeling the success, you can attract it because it's familiar to you. which is something you should actually really let sink in. So when you already feel the vibration of success, you can attract more of it because it's familiar to you.
Oh, that is so good.
As if in the vibration of failure, you can attract more of it because humans like familiarity, even the negative side of it.
And I think that's what I described earlier as the echo that I felt. The world was an echo of myself.
Yes.
That's getting more of what you already had.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. So it all starts with ourselves. So we shouldn't try to change the world around us. We should just look at ourselves and change ourselves. Is that what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, inward. Everything comes from going in.
Wow. Jessica, thank you so much. This has been nothing short of phenomenal for me, very enlightening for me personally. And I really hope that, it means just as much to the listeners. This has been a real pleasure. I think you just sold me. I'm going to buy your courses. Maybe we can finish up recording and have a quick chat about that. But I think I need more of that. It's really enlightening to me. So I really hope that it helps others as well. And thank you so much for meeting with me today and, sharing all of this. Because, I guess I can see it in you. I can see you in front of me. You have a certain vibe around you that's just shines a certain light. And I can sense that here. It's fantastic.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me. It's always like a deep honor because, from a really humble place, like I never imagined my life to be the way it's turned out. I never, sometimes I feel emotional about it, but, I never could have pictured this for myself, but I just kept committing to growing and I just kept committing to being curious. And so then when people like you come to me and say, hey, I love what you're doing, can you share? It's actually an honor for me to be in your space. So thank you so much.
It's fantastic to have you. Holy moly. Wow, what an episode. I took so much out for myself. It was almost like a business therapy session for myself. So I really hope that there was heaps of awesome information in there for you as well. Jessica, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insight. I think we all can learn something from you. You're an amazing human being, and thank you for sharing. If you want to know more about Jessica Chambray, check out her podcast. It's called The Abundance Hub Podcast, and it's available on every platform that I know of. You can also check out her website. It's called jessicachambray.com.au, and of course, the link is in the show notes. On her website, Jessica offers business coaching for a range of different businesses, from small startups to big businesses. This might be something for you at some stage, or maybe you can recommend her to somebody you know. Jessica, thanks again for being on board today. I love this conversation and I will be in touch again. I need more of your wisdom, and hopefully this will help me to be more successful in my own business. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please go to your podcast app and leave us a 5-star review. That would be fantastic. And if you can, please also just leave a little written review. That would really make my day. If you have any questions, if you would like to reach out, please join me on Facebook on the Production Talk podcast community. It's our Facebook page where I hang around, answer questions, where you can find like-minded people. Or alternatively, if you want to reach out to me for mixdown services, please contact me at mixartist.com.au. I'm curious to find out more about you and your music, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to you. Thank you so much for listening today. I'll speak to you next week. Talk soon. Bye for now.